This is Too Long for a Voice Note, a podcast about everything and nothing at the same time, presented by Claire
and Enzo. Our podcast is produced in London. Some conversations are just too long for a voice note.
Hey, she's Claire.
and he's Enzo.
And this is Too Long for a Voice Note.
Hello!
Hi guys!
Welcome
Hello
back.
everyone! Welcome back to Too Long for a Voice Note.
A podcast about everything and nothing at the same time.
Presented by Claire and Enzo. How are you, Claire?
I'm good, how are you?
How's everyone?
It feels like we've been away for ages.
Right? But it's not that much.
Isn't it?
But it feels like ages. But
Yeah.
Oh, good. How
So,
are you? How's been
yeah.
everything? How's been your week? How's been your life?
Busy.
busy
a
week.
lot going
Yeah.
on. Different things. Ups and downs. Highs and lows.
But I won't tell you anything. So
I won't tell you anything unless you're my friend. Anyway, but all good. You love?
Good. I've been being like a cat sitter this
The
week.
baby cat.
Yes, I've been taking care of my cousin's cat, Selena.
Selena.
It's been a big responsibility this week. I was
Yeah.
like, wow, I'm not prepared for this.
Yeah.
I mean, actually I am. It's not that bad, but it's
Yeah.
like a lot, like, it made me think a lot, like,
About responsibility,
Responsibility is
having
like-
a baby,
yeah.
kind of thing.
I was like, I want to do my thing, but then when you think there's someone else
Yeah.
alive, I mean, it's not like I'm not, I mean, of course I'm caring with my friends and,
Yeah.
everyone, but it's kind of like,
She's dependent on
she's
you.
dependent on me,
Yeah.
it's different. So it's kind of like, wow, you need to like,
I think it's a
feed
good
them.
test having a cat. See if you want a baby.
Yeah,
I think this has been the
yeah.
test to prove that you don't want a baby.
Yeah,
Not that Selena
most
is
likely.
lovely, but it's like you're not ready for the responsibility.
Yeah, because it's kind of like I think you get a bit stressing when you think like, oh, well, this alive thing, this thing that is alive and breathing needs you to
Yeah.
eat and to like, you need to play with her, to pay attention to her, but it's really sweet. It's a really, really, really sweet cat.
Yeah.
Like very needy, so it's very cute,
Cute
because
for a
always
cat, right?
yeah, it's very around you. But yeah, it's been my week just babysitting her, well, cat
Nice.
sitting her. So yeah, think about responsibilities and things and like, yeah, it's a
The weather,
interesting...
not to talk about the weather, but to
But
change the
we're-
subject. But,
yeah.
oh my God, I went out for dinner last night and I was walking home. Hail. And so hail. Genuinely, I thought it was raining, but it wasn't. I was like,
Yeah,
"What-
it's crazy.
why is it hard, the rain? And it was
It's weird,
actual
right?
hail.
Yeah, it's weird,
What's
but I
going
think next
on?
week is gonna be a little bit of a spring again, a bit
Let's
sunny.
hope
So
so.
yeah, if you live in London, you will feel the pain. Even though I think in the whole Europe it's been a bit weird lately,
Yeah.
Lower warming, we're destroying the planet.
We
Yeah,
are,
this is like
cheery.
our agenda all the time.
But
Yeah,
guys,
fuck it, but it's
do
true,
remember
yeah.
to like,
Subscribe, share,
comment,
do all of those things.
Let's manipulate the algorithm.
I have to say, I have seen lately that our beautiful listeners are not commenting on our YouTube videos. So I'm gonna call you out, like, you need to comment on our videos.
Yes, please.
I'm realizing lately you're not commenting, so I'm a bit like,
And also do leave us a review and those favourite thing. Please do give us 5 stars on Spotify.
I love it. This is
You just need
actually
to-
very easy.
Exactly, because you just need to
Yeah,
swipe
yeah.
and then you can give us 5
It looks
stars.
nice, like it looks nice. Like, oh, they have all these reviews. So
Yes.
we're actually very grateful because I think we have a very nice number of
We do.
reviews. So like, thank you very much
Yeah,
for
thanks,
rating
you
because
guys.
it kind of keep us up in the algorithm. This week it's my secret topic of the
Yep.
week, right? It's my turn for Enzo's secret topic of the week. My topic this week. I mean, it's a bit of it's a big topic,
Okay.
but I think we can, as always, we can go to many, many different places. But let's see where we go because I wanted to just have an open conversation about it,
Okay.
of course. I want to talk about toxic masculinity.
Cool. I knew it was coming.
Yeah,
I
because
knew-
we've been talking about
talking about this a lot.
I
yeah.
think, the root of this conversation, I mean, we're always talking about this because how not is
Yeah.
always around us, this type of, I think we're learning a lot about it lately as well more. So it's more like a topic that's on the table all the
Yeah.
time, right?
Yeah.
Do you say on the table?
Yeah, on the table.
On the table.
Let's put it on the table.
It's on the table, the topic. So I'm like official speaking here. So yeah, and especially what happened with Will Smith like 2 weeks ago or
a couple
something.
of weeks ago, yeah.
I know, I'm sure you all know what happened, but most likely, like, his lab, Chris Rock on the Oscars, and there was this whole drama, and that obviously opened again a lot of conversations about like how men react, how men we are supposed to react. And like, I think it was very interesting that me and Claire, we talk a lot. We discussed about like how people were so sometimes divided, or like men supporting Will Smith, or some women supporting Will Smith, some people like rejecting the action. So I think it's very interesting how like we are shaped and how people perceive what being a man is and what masculinity is. And that's why we're going to talk a bit about toxic masculinity and like Maybe we should read like a short
Yeah,
definition.
let's do a definition
Let's do
of
it.
what is toxic masculinity. Toxic masculinity involves cultural pressures for men to behave in a certain way, and it's likely this affects all boys and men in some fashion. Toxic masculinity refers to the notion that some people's ideas of manliness perpetuates domination, homophobia, and aggression.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
obviously the basics of the concept, of course. I think it's not as simple as that, but obviously that's the core of it. And I think what I find very interesting in this conversation about, I mean, there's many, obviously, like places we can go, but I find very interesting how we perceive what a man is and what's the role of a man. And I think, and we have had this conversation recently, like how complicated it is, like we define like men and women in these particular roles that I think they can turn into toxic behaviors or
definitely,
things that happen like this, because we, or society for such a long time, they put on men like, oh, you need to be, the first reaction need to be like protect, but protect sometimes with aggression. It's not like with wars, because with wars sometimes could be a bit weak.
Yeah, and I think that was kind of the thing with Will Smith, right? And we were talking about this, that and we actually put a poll out on our Instagram to kind of see what you guys thought about this as well. And I think we gave, like, the question was what he did
was right.
Was it right? Yes, it was completely correct. Yes, it was right to defend his wife, but not in the way that he did it. And no, violence is never the answer. And the majority of the people said it was right to defend her, but not in the way that he did it. Sure. We always say it would have been an amazing thing if he had like stood up, taken the mic off of Chris Rock, and said, you know, because he was being really rude about Jada's
like
health condition, her alopecia, and taken the mic off of him and said, like, I just want to say, like, my wife is really brave, my wife's really amazing for this, please don't, you know, talk about her like that, it's really embarrassing for her, and used his words, but the fact that he slapped him, it just completely took away everything. And I think the point why this was interesting was that, like you say, like, I think that is the place that a lot of men go to because of the cultural norms, and it's more acceptable, because the thing is, I think we have to talk about, because toxic masculinity, like it affects both men and women, like feminism is there for both men and women. Toxic masculinity, like it's not really shit for women, it's also really shit for men,
of
because
course.
like they I mean,
to live up to certain standards, to be like a man,
that might not
means.
Naturally be them. And I think we've had this conversation about like how it should be about you as a person, not you as a man. So maybe like, but it just, of course, Will Smith's go-to wasn't to use his words to defend his wife. It was violence. He chose violence.
It's interesting. I remember like when I was reading all of this drama on Twitter, right? Which I find Twitter very interesting, because I think it's like a good mix of everyone there. I think it's just not only like young people, because for example, like if you think, this is another topic, but if you think TikTok, maybe it's younger generations, but then if you go to Twitter, I think it's a bit of everything. And I was a bit, I don't know if I was surprised, to be honest, but I found like a lot of people were like, he did the right thing. If I was him, I would slap him twice. I would break his face, and blah, 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 blah. And I saw a lot of women as well being like, yes, that's how you protect your woman. That I would like my husband or boyfriend to do that for me. And it's kind of like we grow up with these ideas, like defending the person, the people you love. It's through aggression. You do me something, I'm gonna punch you up, I'm gonna fuck you up, I'm gonna kill you. You know, the typical thing, you do something to that, I'm gonna kill you. You know, that's the typical thing we say, right?
Totally,
so it's kind of like this aggressive language that we always kind of like use to as a protection. And it's so, I find so weird how it's like ingrained on us. And like obviously like his first reaction, which obviously we cannot judge also like Will Smith 100%, because we don't know, we all grew up with these ideas, right? If it's something like that happens to any of us, we don't know how we're gonna react. Maybe you're gonna slap him as well. Maybe I'm gonna slap him, I'm gonna fuck him up as well, you know? But the thing is, and I feel which is very problematic what happened, because they're big figures and Will Smith is an icon, right? And he's in this platform, and the fact that he just stood up and just like slapped him in the face in that way, and all this on such like a big event, it's so damaging, because imagine like how many like young men, kids, women, everyone will be like, oh, that's how you do it. That's how you defend your people. And it's not, that doesn't, because what's the solution here? The problem is, like, now nothing changed, you know. There was no message here. The message here was violence. And now, like, Will Smith, he's like in a rehab center feeling like so depressed for what happened. They banned him from the academy for 10 years for what he did, which I think is a bit drastic as well. I feel like if we would like give a message, it would be more powerful if he could like twist this and be like, you know, even if he wants to be a bit aggressive with his words, in the sense of like, you don't talk like that about my wife. Yeah. My wife has a disease and you have no right to speak like that. We're here like we're strong. We're here for like this and that. We're here to praise like art and music. So you don't talk about my wife, okay? I don't talk about yours.
It's that thing of like,
you know, but
it's just a typical thing of like like you say, we never have a conversation about the bigger issue. All that's happened with that situation is all that ever happens is that they basically put a plaster on it. So he's been banned from the Oscars for 10 years and he's in rehab. But are we having other conversations about that? No. Like, he, as far as I know, like, he hasn't had like a statement or come forward and said like, oh, you know, to all the young boys watching me, I really regret this, and like I'm actually going through something really bad with my mental health, which we presume he probably is, because that behaviour isn't normal, so you presume there's something going on there. That's never the way. You can definitely defend your woman if you want to, but that's definitely not the way to do it. No, that conversation isn't had, so nothing ever kind of like, I don't want to say nothing ever moves forward, because it does, and we have moved forward, but like, we're always kind of just masking everything a little bit. And
I think it's a bit rough, because of course we're talking about this, and I guess this will have open to conversation that will be actually useful. But the thing is, like, why it has to be so hard, and why I mean, I know the example that this sets, I think it's bigger than the change that we will create. You know what I mean? Like, we're gonna talk about it, 4 people more, our friends, this and that, but the fact that this happened and nobody remembered this Oscars for anything else than Will Smith slapping Chris Rock on stage. And this, I feel so problematic, this manly power dynamic that was on display and a lot of people were celebrating, because it's kind of like it perpetuates this idea of man has to be aggressive, it has to be like reactive, there has to be like, this is the way how to be a man. And what you were mentioning before, that we had this conversation a lot, like why we focus so much on like women and men and their roles and how they should act, but knowing the human part of it, like we all should be like good, like. And I think that's why interesting, like how a lot of people saying like, oh, the end of gender is happening, because it's true. Like, we shouldn't like expect a person to have certain behaviors because it's a man or a woman. It has to come from the way of your principle, your morals, and who you are. More than, oh no, he is a man, he has to react like that. Like, what if Jada stood up and would go to Chris Rock and slap his face? I'm sure, because sadly also Jada is a black woman. She will be the typical like black, angry, reactive woman that she cannot take a joke, because women, they don't have a sense of humor. They're very like sensitive. They will probably make jokes about, I don't know, her period of whatever, you know, like oh, her hormones, and that's why she react. Because that's why a woman, that's what we say a woman. But for a man, it's like, oh yeah, you go. This is so wrong. It's so complicated. That's why toxic masculinity is such a problem in society.
It is. And I think also, like, another thing, well, nowhere I think is toxic masculinity more prevalent than in the dating world. And this is something we talk about all the time. Like, all these amazing women in our lives just surrounded by these shit straight men, and it's what is making them shit. It is toxic masculinity. Like, that's the root of this terrible behavior.
I think it's interesting, because now that you say that, we were reading this article like we shared with like the other day about, I think it was Esther Perel that she was like talking about it. I think it was, I don't know if it was the name, well, we're gonna link the article here. I don't know if it was the writer or it was Esther Perel in this part of the article, I don't remember, but I think it was her. Talking about like how like toxic masculinity, it's based on culture, and the problem is how men are affected is because since you're a boy, you have this set of rules you need to follow as a man, and if you don't do it, you're a failure. So probably most likely if Will Smith, because also he's from a different generation, he's from a different background, so probably, and obviously we all have different set of struggles, like even your culture, your race, where you come from, that has a different implications or influence on your toxic behavior, let's say. The thing is, like, if he didn't do it, he would be like the joke of his friends, maybe, you know, or maybe not, because he's a privileged position, but that's what comes to your mind. Obviously, you will be like, I need to realize that and protect my woman because everyone will make fun of me. So I was very interested in saying, like, how this is why it's so fucked up for men, and not for being like, oh, poor man. But the thing is, like, as you said at the beginning, like, this is a problem that affects men a lot because you are tied to all these rules that defines you as a man, as a masculine figure. And that's it. One of them is reply like that to a situation.
Yeah, I think it's like, I have to say, like, my patience is running thin with these men, though. And I have sympathy. I do. Like, of course, like, I've endless examples of, like, sexism in my own life when people have been super sexist to me at work, in dating, endless. But I'm just starting to kind of lose my shit with it a little bit, I have to say, because it's sort of like, we can't help where we've come from. Like, we can't help that we've grown up in the cultures that we've grown up in the society that we've grown up in, and we are interacting in those boundaries. But there has to come a point when, like, for me, for example, I'm a woman, and I can say, like, oh, it's really hard. An example might be like, it's really hard for me to tell a man, actually, no, I don't really like that. That is something I find. I find it hard to say, no, don't talk to me like that. Don't treat me like that. Because, again, with Jada, example, it's hard for women to say you're pissing me off because you're instantly like, oh, she's on her period. Don't upset her. That's something that women feel all the time, I think. Yeah. But I have to fight that urge and, like, do the work and be like, actually, come on, Claire, like, it's not your instincts, there is, like, it's not what we're used to, but you have to get a point where you think, no, I have to challenge this. And so do men as well. And I just don't see, I just always feel like it's women that have to, like, do so much of the work and so much of the change, and it's just like, it's really exhausting. And, like, I think it's just like, I've just lost sympathy. Like, I had no sympathy for Will Smith at all in that situation. I think men have to own it too.
But, you know, again, in the same article, this article is really good, guys. They say something that was really interesting. Like, I don't know if you read the part, I think it was towards the end of it, that says, like, men that actually physically abuse of their wives, it happens a lot in households. Their wives, they are, like, empowered. They have a job, they have a career, they have something. Those are the cases when the man actually has physical aggression toward the wife because they feel they're threatened. While when the wife cooks and clean and is pretty and is or whatever, it's just below him. It's less the cases of aggression.
He'll just cheat on her then if it's in that case. For example, you know.
And I found that so, like, wow, okay, that's interesting. It's all based on, like, obviously numbers and the statistics, but it's really interesting how, like, when men, because I can so see it, like, if a man is with a woman and the woman earns double, the amount of insecurity that they will create, but they're created because of the culture around them. Because instead of being like, you go, girl, I'm so happy that you, a lot of men,
a lot of guys will be,
we're not saying, like, everyone. You're talking about, like, this, let's say, fraction of men that which is
and quite general, I think.
Like, they would be like, instead of being like, I'm happy that you're having, like, the bigger career, but I think in a lot of cases, and I think that a lot of, like, in the Latin culture, like, if a woman has, like, a bigger role economically than a man, it's really seen not well. It's kind of really difficult to digest, and always it's kind of this thing, like, the man has to be empowered, has to be up than the woman. That's so common.
Have you ever, like, as a man, like, have you ever felt like this toxic masculinity, or felt like you're not living up to expectations? Or?
I feel like I was definitely lucky in many ways, in the sense of, because obviously my household, I mean, even though my grandparents are from Italy, and my grandfather, he was, in many ways, he was very sexist in the way that my grandma was kind of, like, under his control. But at the same time, it's not true, because my grandma was running a business and he was at home. at one
it's
point.
like, okay,
so it's a bit like he wanted to feel like, oh yeah, I'm in power. But then like my grandma was making all the decisions. She was going to work every single day. Amazing, he was in charge of the house. He was just cooking and doing the creative stuff. So he was living the life basically, which is an interesting role that we're playing, because she was the one out working from the family at that point.
But was she letting him believe that he had the power, and she was like, okay, like kind of thing? Maybe, was it that dynamic kind of thing?
Maybe it was a bit of that. I'm not totally sure of that. I guess to a point it was, because I think they were very level up. They both worked always. Okay. They would have to work, but there was a point that my grandma was taking care of it. Anyway, the point of this is, I think that side of that, because my grandparents were Italian, so we know obviously, generally speaking, especially back in the day, I think nowadays it's stale, but back in the days, Italian culture was very, very sexist and very male-dominated, and very the man and the woman has its role, blah, 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 blah. I think I could have been really affected by that and really fucked me up in many ways, but I think I was very lucky in the sense of like, there was a lot of like this, I think in my family there's a lot of like, for example, like art expression that always was around. Like my grandpa, even though all of these characteristics, he was very artistic. He painted, he was creating art all the time. He loved cooking, which is something very like, let's say, more emotional. You know, he was very connected to his emotional part. Yeah. Music, arts, cooking, blah, blah, blah. So he didn't have, I guess, like a fragile, like male ego. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Because he was taking care of things that maybe are soft for a man.
Like the domestic
stuff as well, in the sense. But then also think like in my house, like I don't think my dad was really like, even though the dynamic between my mom and my dad was the one who was working and my mom was staying at home. But I think that was a decision that they both made. Yeah, yeah. And my mom was happy with that. Yeah. Even if it's culturally or not, who knows, but she was happy with that decision. But I think my mom has always been very open, and I didn't get any message from my dad like, oh, you need to do this to be a man, you know? And from my from my other side of the family, with my grandpa either, I never got the thing of like, you need to do this. Or, you know, like my grandfather, he also used to love like football. He was obsessed with football. But he never pushed that on me. We were all watching football on Sunday, but he knew I didn't really care for it. Instead of like my cousin, he really loved it. He was playing, like always watching with him, but didn't care. And he never pushed it to me. And I think I was very lucky in that sense, because he was very like, it's your business. If you don't like, stay here, play with us. And I never felt also rejected. Yeah. I never felt... I was lucky enough to not feel rejected in this context, because I think in any other context, I would be the reject one, the one that was less loved, the one that... But then I connect with my grandfather in different directions. That's cute. With the painting or with the music. And he was like, oh, can you help me with this to copy this album or whatever? Can you help me with... So I think because he has these sensibilities, he knew in his own way how to connect with everyone in different ways. So I was very lucky. Super. Because if it wasn't the case, I think I would be very fucked up. Because I think I don't like I mean, I can watch football like on the World Cup and I can have fun. I can watch for it, but I don't play football. I'm not a fan of football. I'm not a fan of cars. I don't watch the how you call the F1? Formula 1. I don't watch it. And he was a lover of that. You know, like all these things that are manly. Yeah. I don't really care about them. So I could be a really fucked up person. True. Also, like in the Latin context. But I didn't have all of this.
I think your family were quite forward thinking for their time, especially given the Italian heritage as well.
Yeah. I think they were as much as they can be within the limitations.
What about then outside of the family then? Have you felt that at all? Like... I don't know.
Well, that's interesting enough, because I was thinking about this a lot. And if you think about it, I had like a lot of female friends my whole life. Yeah. Because I wouldn't feel that pressure of... And I have like probably like 3 male friends, and they were very like kind of relaxed or more not into like their sports thing that much.
More creative.
More like, it was a different... They were a bit like maybe a bit the weirdos, you know what I mean? Yeah. But most of my friends were female, because they would never judge me or they would never point me out because I wasn't like doing manly things. Yeah. Even though they will come to me to protect them in ways, let's say, which is a typical thing, like, oh, can you, but that comes from a different place. Like, oh, can you walk with me because it's a bit late, can you home? Yeah. But that's a bit, okay, insecurity, blah, blah, blah. you know, there's another layer of that. But definitely, I think because my circle was mostly feminine, I never felt that pressure, you know. And of course, I was more attracted to that because it's more sensitive, it's more artistic, it's more open, it's more caring. While whatever it's like more masculine, let's say, it's so cold and distant that it's not my thing.
It's like, I don't see it in the same way that, you know, obviously gay guys that have really good friendships, generally speaking, and women as well. But straight guys, I often feel like, I mean, guys that I've been in like relationships with, it's like a real like lack of friendship.
Toxic masculinity,
isn't it?
You guys.
And
that's the conclusion of all of this. Yeah, basically, yeah.
That is, like you were saying, it's like not really the energy in general.
It's not really
like,
the energy.
Because to have a friend, you need to probably share feelings and emotions. And I believe that a lot of straight guys only do that with their girlfriends.
Because they cannot, because they don't have the space.
Yeah.
Because the culture told them to this and that, so they don't have the space to be.
Oh, what a shit show.
And you see, like, for example, which is to kind of wrap up this a really good example, like in sports, for example, in football, which is such a masculine sport. But you can see in the moment they score, the men, they kiss. They lick each other, they touch the bum, they grab their dick. It's like, it's almost like a soft porn. You're like, oh my God, like, oh, all right. It's so affectionate because they're allowed in that moment to celebrate and express the love they have for their friend. Because why you wouldn't have a love for your friend?
Yeah, of course.
If it's a man, it's a woman, whatever it is, like,
because
why you wouldn't?
That's a really sad thing. It's because,
sad.
And this is what we will try to, I think, maybe the generation below us, because I don't believe that this will happen for our generation. Like, I think that it's like we're not different. It's like completely not true that like men are one way because they've got higher testosterone, or like women, it's just complete bullshit. So it's like, if you are an emotional person or you're more of a removed, not emotional person, that's fine. It shouldn't be like, you can be a cold woman or like a super emotional man. It doesn't matter. It's about like your personality, but that's just not the way that the world is like set up. But of course, I'm sure like, and I believe that this is not, it's very dark, but this is how dark toxic masculinity is. Like, this is why men like our age, like, that's why they're killing themselves in the high, that's why they have the highest bracket of men that kill themselves, because it's so, I can imagine how lonely it must feel to not be able to express yourself, or to feel like it's weak, to like, you know, like all the shit that you go through in your life and you feel like you can't tell anyone that because it's a weak thing to talk about emotions, or you're not given the tools, because expressing your emotions, it's like a skill. And if you're brought up not being told how to articulate your emotions, and you get to like 30 and you have like a really awful breakup, like, no wonder why, you know?
You're so right. And that made me think, like, I never suffer of that because, for example, all my problems or issues that I once have, I will talk to my friends, including you. And I have that safe space to be 100% open. Yeah. And it's fine. Yeah. And I'm thinking, like, how many men, they don't have that. And if you don't have that, no wonder why so many men that kill themselves. Because you're so overwhelmed by your own emotions and you don't have a space to talk. Like, yes, no wonder. Yeah. And again, I think the conclusion of this is, it's not like playing football or watching that or fixing a car or cooking is bad or good. You do whatever is good for you. That's not a problem, because I feel that this conversation sometimes and often goes to this thing like, oh, this progressive, like, open, feminist, new wave of people. They just want to take away things from us. Yeah. Like, they want to make us believe, like, watch a football game is bad. Or we want to make you believe, like, doing manly thing is bad. Like, no. Like, whatever, like, doing things that we tag and we identify as a manly because we create that, it's totally fine. You can do all of these things, but the problem is not remove yourself from the other realities and things because you want to play that. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, you can play football, do all the things that in the world that are masculine, let's say, and you can still be open, and you can have friends, and you can share your emotions, you can do whatever it is, you know. I think that's the problem there. Yeah, definitely. And like the divisions and all these labels that we create, and we keep perpetuating, like, damaging our society. Definitely,
it's sad, isn't it? Like, it's just like, I think about, like, if I have a son, like how it will be. I will actually be more scared to have a son than a daughter, I think, because it's like I worry for boy, even though I say like I'm losing my patience with them. I'm losing patience with men my age. Like,
not with babies.
Not with babies.
But like, hope with babies,
we can still get them. But it's like, you know, it's very sad.
Yeah.
Super sad.
Well, I think this topic goes. We can go on and on and on, but I think we cover a fair amount of. I think I'm happy with everything we talked today.
Good.
So yeah, Clara, you got 60 seconds to wrap up this topic. No pressure at all, and go.
I think I would want to end it on thinking about some things that we can do and some kind of like tips for you to kind of take away. And like, I think if you're watching this and you're like a man and you feel like, yeah, okay, I get all of this, but what can I actually do? And I would say one thing that I really appreciate as a woman is when a man like has, for me, this is courage, when a man actually steps in. And like, I don't need a man to defend me, don't get me wrong, but if a guy steps in and says like, actually no, you don't get to talk to her like that, I really appreciate that. Or like if somebody's making a sexist joke or a homophobic joke, if a guy turns around and is like, dude, like that's not on. Like no need to raise your voice, no need to punch anyone,
acknowledge,
but just actually no. And like that kind of thing of like locker room banter, you know, because all of those jokes, they kind of like, they really like, language really influences culture. I'm going like, don't interrupt me, you're a man.
Literally like, it's over, woman, enough of your cute ideas, all right?
So it's like, shh. But like, you know,
definitely.
Language really affects everything. Like language is everything. So like if you hear somebody making a homophobic joke, a sexist comment, like you're with like your lads and somebody catcalls, oh my god, like have the balls literally to say no, I'm not here for that. And if they want to turn around and say like, oh whatever, then they're not your friends.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's what we need to do. We need to be courageous enough to actually like just say no.
Yeah, because if not, change will never come to us. Society.
For sure.
Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this episode, guys.
I know.
It's a bit like heavy. It's a thing that like we need to talk. I think like the end of the day, that's the only way to be better.
For sure. Please do leave us comments.
Please.
Let us know.
I'm seeing you all not leaving a comment. So
you're like, I know you're watching it, but you're not leaving a comment.
I would love someone leaving like, I'm not leaving you any comments for God. I would love it.
Literally just a comment. It's fine.
Just a comment. It's fine. Thank you very much.
See you on the next one.
See you in the next one.
Bye, guys.
Bye.